Hi, and welcome to the Thriving Together podcast. I'm your host, Taylor Bertram, and today we have a guest speaker on. Her name is Michelle Hess. She is a fireman's wife. Is that how you would say that? Fireman's spouse, fireman wife. And we are going to start showcasing some more first responder wives and really speaking into the lives of other wives that are listening to this podcast that come from those areas of service. So, welcome, Michelle. I always enjoy being able to do stuff with you. I mean, one, yeah, we are sisters in Christ, but we are actually sisters, real sisters. So I love when we get to do stuff together. I was gonna say big sister, but technically you were a little bit more vertically challenged than all of us, so you're a little smaller. But not I'm not much taller, so I'm actually just barely. But welcome, welcome. So I want you to first just introduce yourself. How long have you been a firefighter spouse? And how many children do you have? Maybe their ages. Let's start there.
All right. Well, I appreciate being on. I love talking about the fire service. It has treated us so well. So I really, really appreciate this opportunity to talk to other fire families. My name again is Michelle. I have been married to Mackenzie Hess, and he is out here in Buckeye, Arizona, and we have three children together. He was a little bit later to the start of his career, so Jeremiah was actually born the same year he got hired, and so he hit his 20 years in November. And some of you may or may not be aware in this service that you could actually do reserve years. So you have to go through all the schooling with your EMT and hazmat and the different things, and to kind of get those skills use. Before you get hired, he was a reservist for about 2.5 years before that with Buckeye. So he has been on over 20 years, but it's the big, you count the actual retirement years. So, and in
Yes.
retirement years, he's 20. And we are now, for those familiar with the fire service in Arizona, we are now in the phase of our life where we're talking about the drop. And when we do that, and that basically sets the clock on retirement. And now we would think backwards instead of thinking upwards. So it's a really interesting phase of our life where we're at. We have, as I mentioned, three children. Sam is our youngest at 18, and he's a freshman in college. Jeremiah is almost 21. He'll be 21 at the end of this month. And so he's pretty excited about that. And he is about ready to graduate from GCU. And Lauren is our oldest, and she is 22 and be 23 in the fall. And she was a kids pastor, and she now works for GCU doing some job career stuff. So we are pretty busy. We now have adult roommates, technically,
All right.
because they're all still at home. But I love it. I love it. I mean, so I wouldn't trade it.
That is okay. So I just want you guys to know I absolutely, I mean, I might be biased, but I'm really not biased. I swear her children are amazing. So if there's anyone, I get to be really blessed to have an older sister that has raised very wonderful children. And with there being such a larger gap, because my kids aren't quite that old yet, I have the blessing of her kiddos that take out my kiddos. And I love it so much. We actually call her daughter Sissy Lauren. She is Sissy Lauren in our house. She is not a cousin. She's Sissy Lauren. So I just love that. And there is some blessings when there's gaps in ages like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so yes, you and I obviously have been kind of, I would say kind of raised most of our lives in the church, but I want you to talk about your
Mhm.
personal faith journey because again, you are, a decade older than me, and so the experiences you have are very different with our parents. So I want you to just share a little of your personal faith journey and how you've come to Christ.
Yeah, actually, my parents, were Catholic and Mormon, and they married and then did nothing. And we actually, my brother and I, there's a older brother. We're really close in age. We're about 2 years apart. Then there's a gap with the middle brother, and then Taylor starts the 10-year gap. And then the youngest brother is 20, almost 21 years. So we're almost apart. So huge gap with seven children. So we actually, it was back in the day where people still knocked on doors and invited your children to go places and you sent them with them. It's kind of a wild concept nowadays, but we had a little old Baptist pastor that would go every week and knock on the door and ask if our family wanted to go to church. And of course, we were too busy, and um, I think he wore my mom down, honestly, is what it happened. And he finally said, "Well, we have this vacation Bible school. Like, surely you don't want the kids just sitting at home during the summer doing nothing. Send them to vacation Bible school." And it was really then that Frank and I heard the gospel, and it just made sense to us. I was a little bit, I was about 7 or 8, and it just made sense. But I have a distinct memory of writing to school and talking to God. Like, if you're there, can you let me know? And can I try to cuss? Like, I don't know why that was my test. I'm gonna try cussing. And I couldn't do it, and I didn't know why. And I was just starting to already kind of question and talk to God, but I didn't know who he was or where he was. And so this vacation Bible school invite came a little bit after that. We got saved, and then we started to want to go to church. And then my parents were like, "What is this church? What do they keep talking about? What's going on?" And actually, they came to church because we came to church. And so we're kind of like the first fruits of the family, really, is the children. So
Mhm.
it's amazing. Like, sometimes statistically it's the men, it's the women, it's the kids. In our case, it was the kids. And then as Nate Bargatze goes, then we had my parents while they were the most Christian growing up because they wanted to do it by the book. So I think when we first got saved, they didn't really know how to mold like Christianity with Mormonism and Catholicism. So they took a little bit of everything. And there was a 2 year gap there where like we couldn't wear pants
Yeah.
or shorts. Like we had to only wear skirts, and then they kind of got over that phase, and then other things. So it was really trial and error that we were all learning together as a family. There was no like they were the leaders because they were the adults, but they weren't the leaders because they were further spiritually along. So it was a really interesting thing to look back on as a parent to go, well, how did my parents? I'm like, oh wait, we were all doing it together. Like nobody knew
Yeah.
where the books of the Bible were. Nobody knew any of these stories. So we were all learning together.
Yeah, it's so funny because obviously I was a lot younger. I wasn't even born yet, right? And so I'm coming into this and I don't realize it until I'm older, right? And you'll point some of those things out to me because I'm like, why is she saying so? I'm like, oh yeah, okay. Because she's
Yeah.
just my parent, like they're just my parents, right? So like I don't know that journey until I'm a little older. And so then I start looking back at it and I think, okay, hold on. Everybody hold on, time out. What is happening? And you're trying to
Yeah.
untangle things that you don't realize might not be in the Bible because that skirt thing ebbed and flowed a few times into our life. So did
It was
pork,
weird.
ebbed and flowed in and out. I remember actually being really angry when they chose to go through that phase. I was in high school and it was
Hmm.
around my birthday, and I was angry.
Oh,
I was like, "Don't you dare take that away from my birthday!" I was
it
like,
must have recycled back. Yeah, because I,
"It
I
did
think there was some
recycle
let up in
back.
there.
It
Yeah.
did not recycle on my birthday. They gave me turkey bacon, and I was like really
Mhm.
not thrilled." So, but it is interesting when you are trying to untangle those things as an adult and as you're raising kids. And you and I have had those conversations because I still sometimes things will pop up. I'm like, was that even biblical? Like, what was that? Is that Mormon? What is this?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So still having to kind of search through some things. But okay, so thank you for that. And okay, let's talk about some realities of the firefighter life. It's a lot's probably going to be new to me. I don't know. What was the biggest adjustment when you became a firefighter spouse?
The first adjustment, since he didn't get hired until he was about 20, what would it have been, 27, 28. So he was like the old man in the fire department. So that was already first kind of funny and weird. So we had been married already 4 years. And so for me, the weird thing was sleeping alone. And I've got, I'm a little embarrassed to say, I don't even know why, because now it's actually probably the part I love the most. But
Oh no.
um, back in the day, I distinctly remember being like we had our daughter while he was in the academy through Glendale Community College. And so I think it was like the mother bear in me kind of started to come out. But when we moved from our house in Surprise and he got the job in Buckeye and we moved, he they lifted up the mattress and there was a huge like kitchen knife underneath the mattress and they were like, why do you have a big knife under your mattress? And I just said, well, I was so afraid sleeping alone. I didn't know what to do. Like, I didn't know how I would defend myself, how I would.
Oh.
So I had a knife underneath. I didn't know what else to do.
I did not know that.
Yeah, it was kind of a funny story. So sleeping alone was like in the very beginning, that was actually the hardest part was just the sense of, if something happens, like, am I going to hear it? The kids are in the front part of the house. I'm towards the back. Like it was more of, they're starting to talk about all these emergency scenarios. So then I'm thinking in emergency scenarios where I probably wouldn't otherwise. And so it was, well, what would happen if somebody came in? What would happen if there was a fire? And so he got me thinking. And so I don't know why I thought anybody would come and find us in the middle of Sun City slash surprise and pick my house or whatever. But I had a big knife and I got embarrassed when we moved because
Um,
4 or 5 friends got to see that and they're like, you're weird. Kitchens belong in, knives belong in the kitchen. They don't belong under your bed. So I think that was the first thing.
that is funny.
Uh,
So, what is a normal age to be hired at?
It's pretty young, especially right now. We're seeing the same cycle that when he got hired on, the average age was probably 18 to 20, so probably split the difference at like 19. And we're kind of seeing that cycle back again. So a 20 something year old, 20, 21. So to be already married and already have children was very foreign. I think there was only a handful of them that had been that far. So it was really fun because that was another layer that we didn't expect when we came in, is that we got to go to all of their weddings, see how
Oh,
they all met each other, help through the parenting stages. So because we were further along, so it was actually it ended up being a really big blessing to be able to kind of be those bigger brothers and sisters, or like almost parent-like things to go, hey guys, we don't know how to do this. Hey, how did you guys do this? Or we're thinking about getting married. What advice would you give us about this lifestyle? So it ended up being a blessing in disguise, but at the time it was a little bit lonely because we were some of the few that only had children. I think the ones that we did have kids, we bonded together a little bit closer. But then we all had similar mindsets, like how do we turn back? And then raising the kids, I think, you're spending half of your life as a single parent is really hard. I there were phases of my life where I'm sitting in church and this is like the third or fourth week that he hasn't been with me because maybe he worked his 2 shift in a row and then he took an overtime shift, and now it's like, okay, I feel like I'm just doing life alone sometimes. So there were some really lonely phases, not only just at nighttime but going to church, birthdays. I think he's missed well, at least a third of my birthdays that we've been together, maybe a few more. So
so
I've
how
learned
do
to
you
just go
feel
celebrate them.
I mean, those are really hard. How do you think you handled those like during that time period? I mean, obviously you're still probably
We're
missing.
still married.
I'm like, you're
Yeah,
still
and we're
married.
still.
You're probably still missing these things. He's not out. He's not done.
Mhm.
How do you think you're still like kind of managing that? I mean, I know it looks different now, but maybe through the
Mhm.
phases, how was managing the household, and those long shifts going
I think
together?
I went through a cycle. So the first couple that it happened on, it was, well, this is duty. Like I'm just, of course they're going to happen. This is the lifestyle we talk about. You're just going to miss a couple, and if I'm a great firefighter wife, I'm just going to get over it. And so there was a period where I was like, okay, I'm just getting over it. And then there was a phase in my life where the Lord was really doing something in my heart about father issues. Like I had father issues. We do have 2 separate dads, same mom. And when my parents divorced, I went with my mom and didn't have a great or much of a relationship with my father. And it was really about being known, being seen, and being loved. I had identity issues. And I think during those phases where the Lord was trying to clean something out in my heart, those were the hardest years. Those really felt like you're not even here. I bought my own gifts
Oh
because
no.
I'm really, really picky at gifts. If you don't have the perfect thing, just don't buy it. Just don't buy it. Don't waste my money. And so I think I was buying my own gifts because I wanted to make sure it was what I wanted. We were broke half of our marriage because of, at the back in the day, like we didn't get paid very well. Because we were a newer department. And so it was a phase. I've gone through cycles. And then as the healing came, um, there was a freedom in, hey, I can go there. Like I could go and sometimes we could go plan to be intentional about my birthday. Like, let's go somewhere. I don't want you to just take off to take off. We truly can go have dinner anytime and anywhere and any place. But we were intentional a couple times. There was time I was just intentional. I was just like, hey, it's my birthday. I feel like going to Disney. And I did. Like, I called mom and I was like, you want to go to Disneyland? I just feel like it's fall break. Let's go. And I did. I took the boys because Lauren was on a mission trip. My nephew came and my mom, and we had a fantastic time in Disneyland. So I went through phases where it was dutiful, it was really hard, and now I've learned to kind of embrace it. I feel like I suck at celebrations too, though. So I think that gave him a pass to go, well, she doesn't really celebrate a lot of stuff. Like I
Mhm.
celebrate the big ones. Like, okay, it's Christmas, let's do it. Thanksgiving, let's do it. Like we do the big ones. So I think he just thought it didn't mean a lot to me either. And but I think that came from low self-worth. I really didn't feel like I deserved it. I just thought like other people's needs were higher than mine. So those were some of the issues that had to kind of get worked out that I didn't feel like I was worth celebrating, I think, for a lot of years. And as that has happened, and I've found my worth in Christ, I have found a true father, kind of had that push through of into a higher level with God that has looked different. So it's almost like before I had that experience and then after
Yeah.
and figuring out who I was, my reactions and things were different.
Yeah, I think that is obviously in our faith journeys, that is really showing our growth, right? Because you don't want to
Mhm.
stay stagnant in your faith journey either. And so being able to look back and recognize, okay, I was going through that. And even as you talk, there are a lot of, similarities. For Andrew, he was the old guy going in because he was 24 and a lot of guys going at 18. So like he definitely was an old guy going in. And we were going in with kids. So like I was also the weird one in there. So there's a lot of similarities as you're talking, and I'm like, oh, we're sisters, but I don't think I realized how many similarities because again, you were doing it ahead of me. And so it's like I don't necessarily always recognize those similarities. Um, but there is that journey of, I don't know, I feel like when you were talking, I'm all, oh, is it that it's God working and purging through our weak areas and like really solidifying our identity? Is some of it like we're both coming from kind of similar parenting, right? Similar parenting styles because I do have my dad, but and like that's who helped raise us, but he also has a really big testimony of his own story and journey of how he got there. So I wasn't necessarily having that as the example in my younger years. So just all of those things, kind of do the same. And I remember going through the same journey as a military spouse as I was going on our like third year in a row of him missing every single holiday and every single birthday. But I think what kept getting me every year was that he was always home for two holidays, and it was his birthday and Father's Day every single year for 3 years in a row. It was the only two things he made. And I don't know, I didn't handle it great. Like I just didn't
Yeah.
handle it well. And I just remember that because I had to start shifting my mindset. Like, no, I will no longer be disappointed on these things. Like, I will know these will no longer affect me this way. And it's just funny how we have to progress and grow through those things as those happen because I always remember it because I was super obviously grumpy about it. So it is interesting when I hear you talking about it because I'm like, oh my gosh, I had to do that too. I was so
I think it's being
grumpy.
intentional, right? Like, hey,
Yeah.
I just noticed a pattern. Could we take maybe your birthday and Mother's Day, and it's really learning to ask for what you want. Um, so we kind of circle every year, like, hey, this is where all the holidays fall. Like, are you okay? And he checks in with me now. But it took a process. And I feel
Yeah.
like God in the process wanted to heal my wounds first. He
Hmm.
needed to bind up, just like the scripture says, he needed to bind up my wounds. They were made keenly aware when I had my daughter. And on every form, it was like, do you have this on the paternal side? Do you have this on the fraternal side? And I couldn't answer most of the questions on the father side.
Mm.
And it was like, you don't have a dad in a lot of ways. And so it was there that he showed me where the wound was and how to start walking through that wound. And it wasn't till those wounds started to heal that we started to talk about identity. And funny story is there was a fight over my name when I was born. Mom wanted to name me Mickey Rose, and my grandparents were like, we're never going to call her that. But they came to an agreement that they would put an official name of Michelle Roseanne on the birth certificate, and then they would all call me Mickey Rose and go along with the plan. Never happened. They tricked her. So I got my real name, and I'm grateful for that. I really do. Thank you, Grandma and Grandpa, for fighting for that. And even later,
You
I
wanted it.
watched Sleeping Beauty and I wanted to change my name. I almost became Aurora because I just was convinced that she was the best princess at the time. And I'm really glad because most people can't say ours very well. So I'm
I
really glad
cannot.
I didn't do it. You wouldn't have been able to say it.
Yeah.
But even there, I can see how the devil was after my identity and who I was going to
Mhm.
become before I was even born. He was out to figure out you didn't even know what to be called. And then you tried to do it because you probably didn't know what you were going to be called. There was probably confusion. It's not a memory I have, but I'm guessing my mom tried to do it and it just didn't catch on. So there was probably two names being called for a while there. And so I think that was the second piece. After I was kind of healed up to a degree, then the next was this is why you've been struggling with your identity until you figure out your identity in me. The rest doesn't matter, but there has been a fight for your identity for your entire life. And most of us will experience a degree to that because
Mhm.
that's the most powerful thing. If you could figure out who you are in Christ, who you've been called to be, you're unstoppable. So the devil doesn't want you to figure that out. And so and my name actually means one like God. And so it's a pretty powerful name.
Yeah.
And yet, there was a confusion over it for a lot of years. And so that was pretty interesting as the Lord started to unpack that.
That is, yeah, I don't know that I knew it was Mickey Rose. I knew you wanted to change your name though. I did know that. And I was so forever grateful because I still cannot say that name. And now we have like our nephew named their daughter that. And I'm like, oh no. Like I really have to think hard when I have to say it because it doesn't necessarily come out correctly. But
Yeah.
um yeah, identity is massive in all of this.
Mhm.
And I love because we have a weird thing around names or something with mom because I spelt mine wrong until I was 16. So figure that out. Like I didn't spell any part of my name correct. And so like I think no, I was 15, I think. And I remember turning 30 and Andrew congratulated me for spelling my name correct for half my life. So there
The
you
funny thing about your name is I remember being in the hospital room and we didn't have a name for you. I don't know why they couldn't figure out a name for you. And I had literally like whipped out the phone book. And for those who don't know what a phone book is, it was a book about this size, had a bunch of names and how you could actually find somebody's phone number if you had to call somebody. And we were just going through names and we are like, how about this one, this one, this one? And I remember calling out Taylor and all of us went, that seems right. But we never discussed how to spell it. We
go.
just discussed. So in a weird way, I picked your name from a phone book, and that's how you got your name after you were born, not before.
That is so wild. I actually don't know this story. Oh my dear
Yeah.
y'all are holding secrets. Well, I know because mom clearly at 15 had zero idea that she had done it wrong. And I'm like trying to match passports and licenses. I really do feel like I was 16 though. So my first license probably had an OR in it, actually. I don't even know how this happened. But
Yeah.
I remember her just walking through like, oh yeah, that makes sense. I named you Taylor, not Taylor, and I named you Catherine, not Catherine. And it was just all these reasons of
Yeah.
like why she would have spelled it this
Yeah.
way.
She's a
And
phonetic speller. Yeah.
phonetic speller. Yeah. And now I have a Catherine, but I spell it the way my name is spelled, which is funny. So I've actually just kept it going. All I did was
And
keep
I
it
think I write it wrong a lot of times because I am not a phonetic speller.
not either, which is probably why I spelled my name wrong for 15 years. Anyways, but there you go. Okay. So during this time, so I know we've talked about like your identity in that. And so
Mhm.
not only are you adjusting to, honestly, you're adjusting to being married, you're adjusting to that career. You also have children. So how did that impact your style for like parenting as a mother, as you guys have already started your family, and by the time he's truly hired on, you have two kids now, right? That was Jeremiah. So you have two kids. So how is this impacting you as you're going through all those things? So now we know you're going through all these shifts and changes. How is that impacting you as you're parenting and you're doing it half the time on your own?
Yeah, the whole period when you have toddlers and infants was just exhausting. So that was really, really hard to not have somebody at home. I'm so grateful that we basically had to keep moving by mom because I needed a support system. So we had a great church support system, and I had my mom really close to me for a lot of those years. There was a little hiatus. You guys were in Vegas
Mhm.
that I didn't have, and I really had to rely on the church. And and that worked, and that was fine. But then she moved back, and it was great. I think in the early years, again, it was out of obligation. You just push through. I kind of had some help, and that was fine. But as they got older, I think I started to get really upset and resentful that I had to be the good cop, bad cop all the time. There was no like balance. Like, well, when do I get to be the good cop if you get to come in every 2 years or 2 months or
No, I'm
2 days?
all.
Because oh no. So his just to clarify, so his work shift when he first started was 24 on, 48 off, and then he went to paramedic school and he was home for a year. And then pretty early on, they switched to 48.96. So he's gone for 2 days, home for four. And so for 2 days, he's not home at any given time. And so I think that was hard as we actually started to get into more complex discipline issues. That's where it was really kind of hard. The little toddler stuff, they had no concept of time. I did. I had the concept of no sleeping, no eating, no bathing, stuff like that. But again, it was early on, so I just felt obligated. Like this is just the life. I was just so grateful that he was called to this job, and I felt the calling too. And so it was like that got us through the early years. But then it got really, really complicated, and it was hard. There was um, how do you explain the issue just happened in the intensity of it, and then he's like, "Well, what's the big deal?" Or wait till your dad comes home. Oh, wait, that's in like 2 days. It didn't really work. And so there was a lot of frustrating times during the middle of when they were probably, like that kindergarten, first grade through like third or fourth grade. So those years were really, really tough. I'm going to give you a little hope though. On the flip side, because I've had to have the harder conversations and had them more often, I get the phone calls now. Like when they have some deep things to talk about or they want to share a little bit more, he'll go, "Why did they call you about that?" And I'm like, maybe it's because I had to have all the hard conversations before. So it's like I laid the groundwork for the door to open to have these complex problems as adults or as teenagers heading into adulthood. So um, as much as it sucked then, there was an odd benefit to it later. The dividends paid
Yeah.
over here.
Hmm.
You're gonna have to talk about the puberty. You had to talk about the hard things. Like
Yeah.
this is your period. You had to like they were happening whether they were on shift or not. These hard conversations were happening, and now it's probably a little bit more blended. That the boys will call him for different things now,
Hmm.
and then they'll call me. But there was a really big period there. He's like, "How do you know that? How do you know that that's what's going on, or that's what he's thinking, or that's what they're thinking about college, or that's what they're thinking about this major life thing?" And I really truly believe it was because we've had to go through all the awkward and all the good.
Yeah.
And so they're like, "Hey, we kind of know how mom will react." There was still a little bit uncertainty, I think, with how dad will react. So I feel bad, but it was something he had to work on later, which is weird. How do you instill all that later? But I'm here to tell you hope that you will reap the blessings of the hard conversations and the hard disciplining and all those things pay off later when they need to call and talk to a parent that they trust. And there's still hope because Mackenzie's doing a great job, um, you know, having those man conversations about, what kind of careers do you go into and how do how would you, I don't, all the weird things. So,
Yeah.
That I'm not, I'm like, how come he called you? So now I'm the one being offended. Like, I don't know why I've been doing everything right. Why are you calling him and not me? Why am I the second one to hear about this and I'm not the first? So there has been a couple weird little jealousy things lately.
That is so funny. Yeah, I'm not that far into it, but at the beginning, yes, I did have to have the same type of like convos and I was laughing. So I was telling somebody about it and I was like, I'm still just in the early ages of teenagehood. Um, and sometimes I get like the worst of some of the backlash sometimes from them, but I'm
Yeah.
also the first to hear the most insane things as well. As in, I do find out about the crushes and the girls and, all the
Mhm.
things, but they'll be like, we can't let dad know. He'll ban us, from walking out of the house, and it's just so funny their mindset of it and it's
Yeah.
just because I chat with them about it,
Yeah.
But at the same time, I don't know, they were telling me about, they're changing right now and
Yeah.
they are telling me things and I'm all, how do you know that? How do you know that's what's happening to you? And they're like telling me all the things and I was dying laughing on my way home from youth
Yeah.
group last week because I just was like, what? And then Andrew's like, why did they tell
Yeah.
you that stuff? I'm all, I don't know, probably because we've just been talking about it forever, and now it's just finally happening and so they're just telling me. And so I
Prepare for
do.
your teenage years. They love to talk at 9 o'clock at night on. I there were
Really?
all of their high school years. I'm like in bed at 9. I'm just one of those people. And then they kind of come wandering and they're like, "Are you still awake?" And that's when they just bleh,
Yeah.
everything is like not. I mean, there have been a lot of mornings where our nights where like, okay, this is obviously a longer conversation than just walking downstairs and sitting on the couch for hours.
Yeah.
Um, and I would, I think I was more exhausted their high school year
I feel
because
that.
I didn't have their schedule, right? Like I do need to get up early and I still needed to do work now and stuff like that, but they wanted to have the conversations later. So it was like we circled back to a weird like toddler era where I'm not getting as much sleep because they want to talk at a time I'm not. So if you're a night owl, great, it's coming. If you've
Yeah.
created that relationship and you've done that groundwork. But I wouldn't trade it for anything because I knew the tea on everything and everybody. I was close to their friends, and I wouldn't trade it. They have all asked, for us to be at their weddings and graduations, and I love it. But I despised the hard a little bit in the middle, but it really does pay off later. So just embrace the hard. It's setting you up for things that you didn't see coming. I did not see these 9, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock conversations with my children cuddled up on the couch
I
as
may have saw them
17-year-olds. Like
coming because you
yeah,
told me they were coming and they have been here.
yeah,
And I am ready
yeah.
for them like, oh no. Oh no, I have
Yeah,
stuff
it's
to
kind of
do.
that weird transition where you start becoming, their friend and, just moving into that different phase of life. It's really a beautiful thing if you've done the hard work before.
Yeah. No, it is something. I think one of the nights I was trying to clean out something and Micah found me in the room. And I think it was like 1 in the morning. I'm like, homeboy, you gotta go to bed now. Like I am so tired. But he told me, I mean, I knew everything about everybody after that convo. I'm like,
Mhm.
wow, you are so tight-lipped during the day, but
I
apparently
know.
you just
You're
need
like,
a
why
good
did
evening.
I know. Why? Yeah.
So that
Maybe
is,
it goes back to when they didn't, tell me the story again. Yeah, they just kept wanting to go even like when they're little. Maybe it's
yeah,
comes
I
back
have
to
no
that.
idea. That's so funny.
And now they're
Okay,
telling you the story.
I know. Oh, man, yeah, they tell me all the things. I'm like, oh, like what is
Mhm.
happening? I need to
Yeah.
stay calm right now. Like, oh, that's funny. Okay, so let's move into let's talk about. I mean, we've been talking about the hard and the hope in these hard season, but what has helped you and Mackenzie stay connected despite all of these challenges through the years?
So, the kids they do a lot of activity. So our kids were athletes. We started them in music, just didn't really stick for them at that time. Then they went into sports and they did the different things, and that's fine. But we went into travel ball with volleyball with our daughter. We went to travel. Well, our middle one kind of did golf, and then he did do golf. There's just not a club for golf. So And then the youngest did baseball. So a lot of it was actually going to those things together. I don't, I hate to say it kind of wasn't intentional, but it was. So we traveled together. And so we kind of had these little mini vacations because a lot of times they expect the kids to stay with the kids and then the parents can stay with the parents. So we were kind of getting these little weekends away. It was around sports, but we were together and we were separated. And so that was kind of done for us. I think the hardest thing has been now is we're getting to the place where, hey, we're now should be empty nesters. We've had to be really intentional now more than ever in our marriage before is how do we transition to getting to know each other again? How do we get used to just it's just you and I. There are some days, even though we have three adult roommates, there are days where it's just us. It's just us at dinner. And what are we going to use with our time? So we've been trying to find activities that we like together because there's a lot of things he likes to do by himself and there's things I like to do. So how could we bring our lives almost back together? Because there's not this instant thing of sports. So we've been trying pickleball, we've been trying travel, we've been trying the different things hiking, camping. I know we've talked about some just different adventures we've done around the state. But it was really intentional. So we got out a calendar and we're like, how can we go somewhere different every quarter? It doesn't have to be anywhere spectacular. It could be we just tried camping in the superstitions. So we try to do something a quarterly, and then we went away. So in the fall, we went away to Seattle, up north or whatever, for about a week. So we're trying to travel and kind of rediscover ourselves. So ours again was sports, and then now we're actually having to work it. I know there was some uh, marriage retreats in there during the other years where the kids were still home, and those helped with the communication skills and stuff like that because it wasn't really the time. It was really how were we being intentional with one another and hearing each other better and kind of still seeking each other's heart was more of that phase. And now we're in like a discovery phase all over again because, we've been raising kids for 23 years. And are we the same people that we were 23 years ago? In a lot of ways, we're not. And so, how do we rediscover who we've kind of become? And also, what do we want? Like, what do we want in this next phase of life? What do we want our marriage to look like? What do we want retirement to look like? And so, we're kind of dreaming again as a couple and just trying to figure that out. And where do the kids fit in? Where do they don't? And
Mhm.
yeah, so yeah, I would say be intentional. If you don't have anything like sports, you really do. Because if not, resentment creeps in so easily. Frustration creeps in so easily. And really, the communication does break down if you're not being honest. And I think for him, he was just apologizing first, and we never got to the root of an issue. And then because of worth issues, I wasn't just saying what I wanted. And I don't want you to work this birthday. Can't tell you why. I just don't. I want you home this birthday. I don't need you home. And for a while there, it was like, can I trust what you say? Like he was kind of like, am I going to get in trouble later? You're saying no, but I feel like I'm going to get in trouble later. And I was like, no, I really am a place. I don't care. I will go do birthdays with my friends. It's hard to go take advantage of all the birthday things. Like if you really
Mm,
wanted to go
yeah.
get like the Denny's and all the coffees and like that still takes a lot of work. So there was one year I was just like, no, I'm gonna go do all the things. And so I try to hit up all the free stuff and I didn't need him to go with me in the car and do all those things. I could do those on myself. So I think it was getting a place where we finally could trust what we were saying, saying what we really meant to say, and just stop shutting down because you think the fight will go away. Nothing's getting resolved. And so it was trying to figure that out. But really, at the end of the day, there was a switch halfway through that I'm not fighting you because I'm fighting you. The devil doesn't want our marriage to last. And so when I realized that there was like the spirit behind the person of that's who wants us to divorce. That's who wants us to separate. That's who wants us to have it. It was a lot easier to just have a real conversation when you can kind of separate an issue. Like he's really not mad at me right now. Or that's not really the issue right now. It was something else. Or that was really weird. You were at peace a second ago. What just happened? So kind of
Mhm.
reading spiritually and discerning what was going on. Um, for him, I have to kind of like, listen, is that really the issue? I don't feel like this is actually the issue. So it was like I had to study him and he had to study me. And the more we committed to do that, the better our marriage got, even though it was kind of, like I said, it was very active and busy and very structured with, okay, you're going to go to work and who's going to pick up the kids and who's going to do that. It was, we still had to be really intentional during those times.
Yeah. So during that time, did you guys ever really like kind of experience the burnout then? And like, how did you, if you did, how did you kind of work through that time period?
I hit a burnout at 7 years of marriage. For some reason, that 7 year itch is real for me. Like, so the first year was a breeze. I don't know why. The first couple years were easy. 7 years in is when he couldn't do anything right. I don't know what happened. I don't know if it was me. It was probably where the Lord was doing the most in me. Um, and then I would say the last couple of years, honestly, because we're tired. We're both in careers that expect us to put out a lot, to lead a lot. And I think sometimes we were both looking to come home and not have to lead in some ways. It was exhausting. It was just another decision on top of get this, the at least 35,000 decisions we make on a daily basis for a regular person. So we were probably hitting 45 or 50 in a day. And we were just tired. We're just feeling burnt out by daily life. And this was just felt like another thing we had to do. This was another thing we had to work through. This was another thing. And it's like weird. Like, how come after 25 years of marriage, we just hit 25 in May. Like, why is this harder now than ever? And I think it's that wearing down if we're not pouring into our cup. And we had a lot going on. So it was just a weird shift in season. Our identities as parents were changing. My identity and my career was changing, or potentially at that time.
Yeah.
So I would say the last couple of years, as we've started looking at this shift, like in who we are and where we are in our marriage, we've sensed it, and it's been weird. So even on vacation when we went to Seattle, because we had tried to do something for our 20th, and it didn't go well. We just picked like a random place in California. We thought, oh, surely you can have great time at the beach. No, it wasn't really on the beach. It was
Oh.
cold. It was right before season. So it was like the first weekend in May, and nothing really in the town opened till about mid-May. And so
Mm.
it was just terrible. Like, we had the worst time. We came home early, and I was like, I just want to go home. I don't even want to be with you. Like, this is dumb. This has been the
Oh
dumbest
no.
weekend or 4 days of ever. Like, let's just go home. And we were like sick of each other. And we were both like, oh, what's going to happen like when the kids go? And so when we went in December, about like day 5 or 6 in, I hesitantly looked at him and was like, are you bored of me yet?
Oh no.
He's like, no, I'm actually having a lot of fun. Are you bored of me yet?
Oh
And
no.
I was like, no, like that never even crossed my mind. So it was kind of weird that like we hit a threshold, and it was cute. While we just recently traveled, he asked me, I think, on the last town that we were in, there was a point. He like looked over, he goes, are you bored of me yet? I was
Oh.
like, no, I'm not. Like, we were not, this has not been boring at all.
I'm like, in
Uh,
his defense, okay, so a part of, because I think the previous podcast that comes out, I talked a little bit that I went on a big trip with
mm,
15 people. So Michelle and her husband were on that big trip. So I don't think you can really get bored when there's six kids in tow, moms in
right.
tow, and like, your daughter was with us and my
I think that's
brother-in-law,
kind of why I
right?
was laughing. I'm like, why would it's not been boring at all?
Yeah,
Like,
I don't I don't think you could have had a boring moment on that trip, honestly.
no.
Um, but even
But
on
we
that,
keep checking in. We keep checking
yes.
in.
Yeah, it's so funny. Because even on that trip, I mean, like you were with me along the road with that because Andrew and I were having a tough time on that trip. And so it's just like interesting how those roles kind of um we're probably going through like some weird seasons, where we're trying to raise teens and we don't always um necessarily, it's not that we don't even see eye to eye, it's just sometimes we don't that consistency piece is not always,
Hmm.
sometimes it gets forgotten on one of our parts and that can frustrate the other, right? And there's just all these things
Yeah.
that can happen and trying to manage those emotions when I'm watching my spouse have to manage so many, like he's managing schedules and he's managing so many things that I ended up kind of almost being this little like punching bag, but he thought I was a punching bag, right? And it was just this like we were not communicating, and there was one night we had to hash it out so that we could enjoy the rest of the trip because I was like, no,
Mhm.
I will enjoy the rest of the trip. Like I will not like continue on.
Yeah.
And I think that was the night we didn't meet you guys in town until like much later. And you guys had gotten home when we finally got to town. And it was just because I'm like, we have to hash this out. Like I will not move forward any longer. And sometimes those happen too, where it's just like, you're not going to go anymore. Like, I'm not going to
Yeah.
keep going another day until we hash this out. Like, I will not
Right. Right.
live under this stress any longer. Um,
Yeah.
and he felt the same,
Yeah.
and the way we were viewing stuff were very different. And so that was also very interesting to me. I'm like, that's your perspective? That's not what I think is going on? And so it was just one of those things. So, I totally
Oh,
get that.
but to add to that,
Oh yeah.
even the trip itself, you guys had called me like the day he went to shift. So
Mm,
like that was even frustrating. Like there's certain things he's like, hey, I can't handle this while I'm working because of his role. And so I can't bring up trips. There's certain things I can't bring up for like 2 days if he's
mhm,
on shift. And that's frustrating too. Like, oh, I gotta sit on this thing or like I don't want to tell him. Like we had to put a dog down, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago. I couldn't call him while I was on shift. Like I had to wait and hope the dog made it. And there's just certain things where like we do have the conversation, but then it's like I can't do this right now. I need to talk to you at home in 2 days. And like that's hard to say, okay, I've got to shelf what is really you're passionate about and really need to talk about and unwind and unpack. And sometimes you can't do it because they're on shift. It's not appropriate, whatever they got to call, whatever it is. That's a weird little frustration too of just like these little ticking bombs in different places where you
mhm.
don't see them coming. I didn't know we were going to get in a fight about something on the phone, and all of a sudden they get a call, and great. Now, do I go to bed? Do I wait? What do I
Yeah.
do?
Yeah. No, that is really hard. I know for us, like as spouses, when Andrew is deployed, I don't think it was until like further into it did he ask me like, "Hey, can we just have like a normal conversation first? And if you have like if there's stuff you need to bring up, can you like just wait until we can just connect first instead of me
Mhm.
feeling like I'm just dumping on him, right?" And so
Yeah,
even that I had to figure out like how do I navigate just having a conversation with you, seeing how you're doing, and then eventually shifting over to like, hey, like here's big things going on, cars broke,
right.
house broke, like I don't know, it's
Yeah,
just like nothing's working, and you're not home for another 7 months. Like, it was one of those really hard things to have to deal
yeah.
with.
And
So
just
they were
having to
like,
figure out. Sometimes you just gotta, okay, I'm just gonna hire the plumber, and it's
yeah,
just gonna get fixed while you're gone. Surprise! And
mm-hmm.
some
Yeah,
days you're holding on, and yeah, that's super weird, and I don't think most people have to deal with that
I know,
because
it's
they don't
really
have to
hard.
go 2 or multiple days without getting an answer.
Yeah, that's true. And I do feel bad because I think we brought up another trip to you and you were like, he just went to shift, guys. And we are like, oh, ew, my bad. Like,
Yes, I'm like, could you? I'm not gonna have an answer for 2 days. Sorry, guys.
yeah, that was pretty funny. I was like, my bad, my bad. You're gonna have to start
Hmm.
sending his schedule over to us,
Yeah,
so we have an idea of
yeah.
like, hey, Michelle, now ask the question. But okay, I
But great
also,
deals don't wait.
but I know they don't wait. That's the
They
unfortunate
don't
part.
wait.
When we
Hmm.
find our deals to travel, we're like, good luck if they're there in 2 days. Um,
Yep.
But you mentioned a little bit about your career, and I do want to touch on careers because there are a lot of spouses that work, whether
Mhm.
it's fire, military. There's so many spouses that also want to continue their own careers and pursue that. So how did you end up balancing that? And maybe share actually what you did so people know why you're answering so many questions more in a day or putting out fires all day. So share like what you
Yeah.
did, maybe how long, and then how did you guys balance that transition?
So when we had kids, and I know this was 20 years ago, 22 years ago, we said we wanted to make the sacrifice and I was going to stay home and raise the kids. That was just a priority. And then add the layer of now he's a firefighter. Like I really did kind of need to stay home. Again, it was a different economy. I think we could. It was super tight even back then. There's days I look back and I don't actually know how we made it back then. God is good, really. That's all I can say. So, but what I did do, because my brain still needed to be engaged. I tried to just do nothing, tried to do the moms groups, and it just kind of didn't work out. But the church kept noticing the leadership skills. So then I kept getting pulled into like pretty big volunteer roles for free. And then sometimes they turn into actual jobs, but they're
Mhm.
church jobs. So, take that for what you want to take it at. So I think a lot of time too, I took less pay because I wanted to continue to be in charge of the schedule. Like if I didn't, you're only paying me X. So if I don't come in this week because I didn't sleep, then you're not paying me much anyways. It's kind of in my head how I was thinking. Probably on top of the like worth issue. So I started out, ended up in churches, somehow ended up with the assistant to the pastor, then for two different pastors, two different churches, and then the women's ministry and some other things doing curriculum. And then we moved to Buckeye. So I quit that job, stayed at home for a couple years, then got a worship job that was, obviously just Sundays, and then I check in with the pastor during the week. And I was still lamenting, like, Lord, there's still more for me, and I don't know what it is. And so I went back to school during that time, which was a really, really big deal for me because I had failed out of college at 18, tried again. So I failed out of ASU. Then I went to community college to try to like just get like basics, and I failed out of those. And so when I went back to school in my late 20s or early 30s, can't remember which it was, um, this would have been my fourth or fifth restart at school. And one day I just felt like I had to do it. And I drained our savings account and said I did it. And my husband just looks at me, and I know he wanted to just freak out. I know
No,
he's like,
no.
but he's like, if this doesn't work, you're not going back. I just want you to know that. I'm like, I agree with you. If this doesn't work, this is it. And I even told the counselor, like, if this doesn't work, I wasn't meant to have a degree.
Mm.
And so I went back and I think Sam at that time was two or three. And so I just took classes like on Saturdays and stuff like that. So I didn't have to interrupt our schedule. And then it progressed as he got a little bit older. But proud to say now, I not only got my degree, I got my master's. But even then, there were times where I'm like, Lord, like I'm sitting at home wasting my best career years here. Like, what am I doing? Like, my brain is like begging to be used, and
Mhm.
it's getting used like this much. And when I get done with this, I'll almost be 40. Like, who wants a 40-year-old with a big old gap of like, oh, I helped at church, I led some songs. Like, how do I translate that into any kind of dollars at any given time? And it was actually through the fire department years later where they're like, you should run for the city council. And I was like, I don't even know what a city council member is or what they do. They like are there and you guys are here. And it was them planting that seed. And us, I remember praying as soon as we got to Buckeye, we would just pray for the city. We would just pray for the leaders. We would pray for the city. We wanted to be a city on a hill. And it's so crazy that this stay-at-home mom that had like this church background I think I was 36 years old, maybe when it happened. I got appointed and then elected to this Buckeye City Council. And God had made up all of those years that I thought were being wasted, or I wasn't really sure how it was going to translate into something
Mhm.
else later in life. And I had the privilege of being the council member for the city of Buckeye for almost 13 years. I think I was like 2 weeks shy of 13 years. And then during that time, I was able to get a job at Leadership West, which is a nonprofit here in the West Valley that does leadership training, as well as just getting a cohort of people that believe in the community and want to take it to the next step. So we talk about the issues facing Arizona, and have found so much uh, joy in just being with these cohorts of like-minded people that really want to move the needle for themselves personally, as well as for their companies and their organizations, as well as the community. So I've had the joy of to do that, and it was like they just gave me instant credit because of what I did on the council. And now I'm just seeing how God is even exponentially doing something different now. I'm in another transition where I left the council in December, and I'm just frankly in a transition period. We went with you guys. Well, I went to Seattle because I got some advice that just said, when you leave the military, when you leave the fire department, um, or even in my case, after something so significant, you need to break the cycle. So
Mm-hmm.
they strongly encouraged, like, go the next day, the very next day if you can, go just do something different. Go to Hawaii, go take a trip, just do something different that you would not normally do. I did not get to go the very next day, but I did go a week later. I had the cool opportunity to go ride in an F-16 jet, so I took that instead, and I don't wouldn't change anything. So I changed the cycle a little bit differently with a ride and then a trip, but it really did wonders. So even that was a forerunner of, okay, this is what we need to do for you, Mackenzie, whenever your day is. Like, we really do need to schedule a trip for us to just be gone within 24, 48 hours. But that shift in mindset and just like when the Lord released, because the transition was super hard.
Hmm.
Um, Knowing I wasn't going to be the council member, still had to sit in it from August to December 3rd. And it was the hardest transition of my life, of just transitioning into a different season. And I had to do it publicly. And so that was really hard. And so I've been trying to just rest. I feel like this is a season of rest where the Lord just said, just be obedient. Because if you're not obedient in the rest, you're not going to be ready for what's next. And so I've been trying to sit in the rest. So we got to go on a trip. And then you called with another trip. I don't know that I would call that one very restful, but it was hitting on the desire of a heart of where we wanted to go. So
Hmm.
if you're in a transition, it's a season and it doesn't last forever. That's the beautiful things about seasons. They are difficult, they are hard. I think I want to write a book or something about the hard or the transitions.
Hmm.
It was really, to me, the Lord kept saying, come to the table. He just kept saying, come to the table. My whole 2024 was about coming to the table. And sometimes it's a table set before your enemies. Sometimes it's an intimate table where he's just whispering, just look at me. And sometimes it's a celebration table, and it looked completely different all year long in 2024. There were a lot of times where I was sitting before my enemies and I had to just stay focused and ignore the chaos that was all around me, the name calling, the different things that were coming at me. And then there was something intimate about, like, hey, we're just going to heal and rest now and come lie by those still waters because I'm not done using you yet. There is another phase, there is another thing, and you have no idea what I'm about to do. So rest up before the journey. And so that's kind of where we're at right now, is resting before the journey. But yeah, 13 years of public life. I don't, Mackenzie's a battalion chief. So we often don't, in our roles, we didn't really feel like we ever turned off. My phone was on 24/7, although I couldn't find it like every other day, but it was
Okay.
on if people needed to call me. Um, so it's just hard when you're in that public role because emergencies happen in the middle of the night for both of us. He's in charge of health and safety. We've had several members, have really major life emergencies, and he's going to be one of the first or second calls, and we have to respond. And so I think we were tired. We were at a really season where we were exhausted, which put the pressure on the marriage, but it also put on us individually. Like, I had to sort out what was going on with me. I can't take it out on him. And the same thing with him. He's got to go find his own joy again. He's got to go find rest while he's still doing the thing. I get somewhat a privilege of going and finding the rest. My job is very fluid, so I can kind of go to Australia and come back or work from Seattle if I have to. So, um, yeah, I answered that plus.
Bless them.
Sorry.
So if you were going to give like a spouse just like one piece of advice on how to juggle family and career and all of that, what would you say to them?
I would say, first off, just make sure it's from the Lord, because I think there's a grace that comes from that. There was a grace that allowed us to handle the pressure that we did, and with joy, and we were doing what we were called to do and finding our identity. I think too, because sometimes you don't have a choice. Sometimes it's like, we got to pay the bills. We are living in a totally different economy, and sometimes it is just the bills. But, and that's where Mackenzie was early on in her career. He was just paying the bills with a desk job. And I don't even know why he took a desk job. He never belonged at a desk job. He didn't have
Mm,
that personality. And so it was really seeking the Lord, like, I know you have something more or different for me. And I believe in the power that the Lord has. He has a calling on all of our lives. And I think you either have to find the purpose within your job that He's placed you in at that moment, or He's going to give you, it's going to be a faith step, right? It was a faith step for us to step out and me be a stay-at-home. We did not know how the dollars were going to come in. And it was a faith walk that He was so faithful to. It was a faith step that He was like, I don't really love my job. Like, what do we do? His earlier job, and we had to pray. We prayed about it as a small group. It was one of our very first small groups as a couple, and the doors started to open for fire for him to just do ride-alongs and find his calling. Like, I believe you got to find that what the Lord actually has for you to do, and then if He's got you there, He's going to give you the grace, but you got to also find the purpose in it. I think we often too often people just go to work for the paycheck. They
Yeah.
forget that they're there for a reason. Like, you are in marketplace ministry or you are in some kind of ministry. We have all been called to ministry. There is a reason, or there's people really, because it's usually, sometimes it's a thing that you're doing. Like, I felt like it was leading the government, but it was also, what were the people? Like, it was always the people of Buckeye. It was never just like, I'm making these decisions. It was the people of Buckeye I was making a decision for. I was trying to set a future. I was trying to do so. Find the purpose in what you're doing, whether it's the raising the kids. There was purpose in me staying home. I get so many compliments about my kids, but it was because they were the purpose. I was growing godly leaders. I didn't just raise kids. There was an intentionality that I knew that they were called for something different and they were called to be different. And so I raised them that way. We surrounded them with people. So I'd say find your purpose in what you're supposed to do. It could be just raising your kids, but it's not just raising your kids. You're raising incredible human beings, warriors, husbands, wives later in life. And if it is something that feels mundane, there's still a purpose in it. There's still a purpose in the people you're around and what you're doing. So I think
Yeah.
we lose that sometimes. So
Yeah, I think just realizing that wherever you are. So actually our podcast that came out on Tuesday was actually all about transitioning into seasons because I'm
mm,
currently transitioning our family into a new season. And so we were talking about new seasons, right? Um,
yeah.
but also being purposeful, intentional. And I always talk about how being a mother is actually such an important role because we are raising the next generation and we have been given a really beautiful gift and blessing to be able to do that, even though it is exhausting. But so is going to a job, and so is running
Mm,
on city council, and all those things are exhausting, right? And um, so I just always want to encourage women, if that is what you are doing, like that is so important because that is the next generation. And if you look at the world right now, especially in our culture, they're trying to take that from us. And there's a
yeah.
reason we're being solely attacked in these areas. And we need to be on guard and really be guarding our kids that much more and that much more intentional. But even for myself, I know that I struggled really hard early on because I always wanted to be a missionary. And so my
Mm,
husband going into the military, it was like, that's not working for me. That's not what I said I want to be. And I don't think that's a surprise for many people that knew me younger. I definitely would just like hop on trips all the time, like missionary trips and do stuff. And so I think the Lord had to work in that in early years for me. Like, know where you are is your mission field, period. And I'm all, oh, okay. Like this isn't going to look like the videos I would watch where I get to go to Africa
right.
and I get to do these things. And yes, I actually have done those things, but it wasn't in the way that like I thought it was going to be. And so truly unraveling what we picture so that God can use it for what the actual bigger picture is. Okay, so I'm gonna like bullet point just like we're gonna do like a fast round of like encouragement for different levels of
Before you go, that though,
oh no.
of all the really cool jobs and things I've been able to do, I still consider it my highest in thing I've done the best at, and my favorite job was being a mom.
Yeah.
I would have given up all the other stuff in a heartbeat. Those don't
Mhm.
even compare to being able to raise my children
Yeah.
and like how they've turned out.
No, yeah, that's why I just call you all the time when I'm going through hard
Yeah.
times because you have
So
amazing
don't,
kids.
yeah. So if you're sitting at home thinking you're doing, um, there are women out there that wish they could be in your shoes. I hear it
100%.
all the time. I hear it
Yeah.
all the time. And we just think, oh, it was today another day of dirty diapers, or today was just another
Mhm.
day of drop-offs. But um, you have no idea the foundation that you're laying. And now that I'm seeing my adult children being released into who they're being called to be, it was the best job and the most important one.
Yeah. And I had the privilege of hanging out with one for quite a few weeks there. And
Mm,
I love her so much. I mean,
mm,
I love all your kiddos, but yeah, so it is just such a beautiful job. So I just
yeah.
really want to always focus on that. But let's do a quick, just bullet round. I'm gonna go fast and you give like a piece for that phase, okay?
Okay.
So what would you say to a new firefighter spouse who is struggling? So they're young, probably. I'm assuming now that they're young, now that you told me this.
Mhm. We had just did a class, and I'm so grateful we do. When we first came on, and I know I'm trying to be fast, but 20 years ago, we didn't really talk about PTSD and how this affect their
Mm,
bodies and their minds and stuff like that. And we're doing a better job now, trying to just bring that information. So I would actually, as a mom or as a wife, go figure out actually the toll that this is taking on your husband's body, because sometimes the reactions that you're getting, whether it's he just came home and he doesn't want to talk and he just seems like he's just zoning out for like a day. You're like, what did I do wrong? Shouldn't he become it? There's actually a lot of signs of PTSD or the cortisol levels being too high or too low. And so I wish I had known that.
mm,
So see, ask your department. A lot of them actually do have these resources available to you. Or just, I mean, the internet is an incredible thing. Just do a little bit of research. I wish I knew how to, it just took months and years of studying his behavior. And I think a lot of it he pushed through, that now we could actually spot what is actually related to the job you wouldn't have thought. So I would say, as a new fire spouse, go figure out actually what PTSD, because it will help not only how you can better serve that and kind of build your day. Like I know he's just going to sleep the first day, so I just kind of go do my business. But I'll plan something with him on day two now of his days off. So look at the signs, and then that way you know if there's actually something wrong. So sometimes that just might be the way that he's cycling back through the cortisol, and then sometimes there's like, no, this is actually a warning sign, and I think I should call somebody. And there's free screenings actually for whole families. So if
mm,
he's struggling, there's actually a free resource that he can get. I think it's 6 or 8 counseling sessions for free, and nobody has to know about it. And then that actually extends to the families as well. So I wish I had known that, and I wish those services were available to us early on.
mm. That's actually really good information. And I do believe so much has shifted, even just in Andrew's 15 years of career. Like we did
Hmm.
not have the same options that they have now. Okay, so hold on. I was gonna actually ask you a different question and now it's out of my brain. Um, Man, it was something you said and I really wanted to touch on it. Now it's just out. Okay. What is one piece of advice that helped you keep going?
Uh, I think it's really just faith and grit. We were not raised, things were not easy the way that we were raised. Between the divorce, the move, and we were married to, or my mom was married to an entrepreneur. So there was really high times, there was really low times. And I think early on, the Lord was like, you're going to need grit for what you've got calling on your life later in life. And I think during my teenage years, I really despised it. I really was like, well, why do we have to be the poor ones? Why do we, and I acted out on all those behaviors. Like you don't even show up for us. I don't feel like you're being provided for us. You're not like, you don't seem like a god of fun. Like, so it was all
Mhm.
of that. And I look back on my life now, and if I did not have that stamina now, if I didn't work that muscle in me then, I wouldn't be able to do what God had called me as a mother or even a council member. And there was something even recently said about my kid. Um, he keeps running into issues, and they're like, that's just life. That's just what it is. And I said, yeah, I guess you're right. If I hadn't done X, Y, and Z, I wouldn't have been able to withstand the. And it was like I was ministering to myself as I was saying it. And it was like,
Mhm.
you just don't know what is around the corner. You don't know what your faith muscle needs to look like. You don't know what your emotional muscle needs to look like because you can't see that far yet. So lean into it. I think I went kicking and screaming too many years. I think I should have just leaned into it, just shut my mouth and said, okay, fine, Lord, what do you want to do? I think I would have enjoyed the process. I think a lot of times we just look at the goal and we work towards it and then we want to get it, but we hate the process. We don't lean into
Mhm.
the process. We don't, and you have to learn to love the process because your goals are going to come and go. And some people are suck at celebrating anyways. So like you hit it, and now what? Like you have to fall in love with the process.
Okay. I like it. Um,
Mhm.
what is a scripture or prayer that sustained you? Did you have something that you went to in scripture or prayer?
I have two.
Okay.
And it's seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all these things will be added to you. So everything I do is about seeking Him. How can I bring Him glory? And then the next one kind of came, I would say like 2012 when he did the Ephesians scripture of like he can do immeasurably more than you can imagine or ask. I never asked for the role at the city. I never I didn't even know I wanted it. And so those, I think if you seek ye first the kingdom of God, and that's really what your goal and your focus is, he's going to do immeasurably more than you can ever think and imagine. So to me, those just kind of go to hand in hand, and I can't separate them. So those are two of my life verses.
Like those. Okay. I'll put those like in the show notes too in case people want to see
Mhm.
those. And then what is a way we can support and pray for firefighter families? Because there's going to be people listening that are not firefighters but might have family members.
I would encourage, if you know any firefighter or you're related or you're in that circle, do the same thing. Find out how the PTSD is reacting, because maybe it's relating into you, even your relationship as a brother or a sister or a mother or something. So you just really do not understand the what they're seeing. We just don't understand what they're seeing. We're also not understanding their cortisol levels, and their adrenal levels are really being affected by the up and down and the startling of their heartbeats when they get the call. And then how do they come and bring them back down? So physically, we're seeing different things. Every state has been doing more legislation to get different cancers covered and different services. So I'd always be trying to see what is going on in your local state as far as what pieces of legislation. So we've had some cancer ones. Um, Believe it or not, they used to not uh, presumptively cover it. Like you had to prove that you got cancer from this call. And so now there are a handful of cancers that are automatic. Like if you get breast cancer, if you're a woman, I can't remember all the ones, but like, so now there's like a certain set of like six or eight or maybe 13 that are automatically covered, but there's still some more that we're trying to figure out that those should also be covered. So I would always say find out what is legislatively going on, that we really shouldn't be turning our backs on that. Um, we Peoria has a every city, I think, or regions. I wouldn't say every city. There's like two or three in the West Valley, and I'm not sure how many are on the East Valley, but it's the Helping One Woman. And I know Peoria's is coming up, I believe, on the 17th, and that one is for the widow of Andrew Mock, the one that just passed away from cancer, and he got it on the job, and he just passed away. He was actually the brother of a friend of ours, pretty close. And so that's like just something like a one-off you could do. Like you could help the one woman, you could go to the lunch, you could help provide. I know we wrote their daughter had a birthday, I think 3 weeks after he passed. So we all just wrote birthday cards. It was just like something simple. They love when you drop off food. I tell people don't ask them what their worst call is.
Mm-hmm.
Why would you ask them to relive something they're trying to forget? And so I think we get that all the time. What's your worst call you've ever seen? And I know it seems exciting, and our minds kind of want to know, like, what's the worst you've seen in Buckeye, or what's the worst? But it really is, you're asking them to relive something their brain's trying to forget. These are traumas, and they're now attached to the trauma. And why would you want them to repeat, whether it was, terrible car accident? Like we would never do that. Like we would never go, hey, tell me about the death of your dad again. Like we, we would never do that in the real world. And yet in the medical world, we somehow think it's like acceptable. So I strongly encourage people not to ask that question. There's
Mhm.
different questions you can ask, like, what's your favorite part of your job? Like, what was your
Yeah.
favorite call? Like, let them kind of guide it from a positive side. Don't ask me what's the worst thing you've ever seen.
Yeah, that's actually really good advice. I haven't thought about it. I also haven't ever asked him that, but I'm like, I haven't thought about it, but it's good to be aware of that, not to ask that. Okay, the last thing that I wanted to ask you, because I know this could be a very real thing and maybe something you've experienced, but how would you encourage someone who might have fear about when their spouse is on the job of something happening to them?
I think so I got the call. I don't know that I thought about it a lot. I'm one of those really easygoing people. I was an easygoing parent, like, yeah, they'll figure it out. Like, so for me, the fear wasn't really a button that was on a whole lot. Um, but I did get a call. Oh, it was pretty early on in his career, in probably his first 5 years. I answer the phone. I'm like, hey, Omar, why are you calling? What's going on? How are you doing?
Mhm.
And they're like, hey, we had this fire. We're transporting Mackenzie. He's okay, but we'll meet you there. And I'm like, what?
Mhm.
And then like that put fear in that I had not had before. And so I just had to face it. And I know others already are a little bit more fearful and it's already there and they're having to keep it at bay all the time. But it really comes down to, do you trust God or not? You have
Mhm.
to ask the question and you have to wrestle it through. And if it keeps coming back up and up, do you trust him? He's been called to this job. I have no doubt in my mind. I watched the process. I watched how it happened. I watched the doors open. I know that this is the thing that he's supposed to do. And do I trust him? It's the same thing with my kids. I'm not here. I'm I'm a steward. Like my hand has to be open with my kids. It has to be open with my husband. And if there's like a, if a fear, it's probably because I'm not trusting the Lord on something. And so you just have to keep going back. Why do you not trust the Lord? What is going on that you're having the trust issues with the Lord and the calling on his life or your kid's life? It just is what it is. There are days that are going to feel fearful. And because if I don't hear from him for a long time, or I know what they're doing, or, there are times that it creeps in and I just got to pray through it because the pretend that it's never going to pop up, whether it's today or you live with it constantly, it is something that is just, you got to pray through it. It's that great. It's got to just go through it. You got to go through that terrible night. And I believe there's going to be seasons for us all, again, whether you're a little bit more on the fearful side that way naturally, or like me, where I don't tend to be, but it pops in there. We're all going to have to face it, but it all comes down to whether you trust the Lord or not. And that's actually the question.
Mm. I think that's really, really good. And yeah, I mean, you've even walked through a lot with us on, you know, do we trust the Lord? Well, you've had to pray me through many things. So honestly, I would agree that it is in the prayer and if we are trusting in like what is going on and why are we being attacked in those certain ways. So I super agree with that. Especially as you guys have walked alongside areas where those are real things that we've had to face. And so
Yeah,
I super appreciate that. Okay, I would love if you do you want, should I, you want to pray over the firefighter spouses that will be listening to this? Do you want to pray over that?
sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So God, I just thank you for this privilege to just kind of come and talk about our journey because it's really a faith journey of how you've called these families to this job and this career. And it has been such a privilege to be in this career to serve others. Really, they get to show up for families on their worst day and walk them through that. And it is such an honor and privilege to do that. And some days it's great days, like a field trip, and other days it is walking them through their worst day, and yet they get to help guide that. And it's such a Christ-like thing, right? And so I just pray, Father, for the strength for these families that are really taking a different kind of cost to make that happen, Lord. Would you just give them the desires of their heart, the whispered ones, the spoken ones? Because there are sometimes some unmet needs. And Lord, would you just meet those needs in the way that you see fit? Lord, would you just give them a grace to carry the burden for this calling? Because that's what it is. They've been called to this job, just like the military and some other positions, Father. They've been called to this. And so, Lord, would you gift them with the grace of that? Would you surround them with an incredible support system in the fire service, in their church world. Just they really need a little bit of everybody. And so, Father, would you just surround these families with the right support system necessary? And God, would you just ultimately you're who we should be going to. Um, and do we trust you with our families? Do we trust you with our identities? Do we trust you with our futures? Really, God, would you just help work those things out in each one that's listening today? God, that you have a higher calling and a higher purpose and a higher desire for intimacy and a relationship that would blow our minds if we set the time to do it. And so, God, I'm just asking for a deeper call and a deeper place of intimacy with you. That was the one thing that really, really occurred in the early years, being set apart and being almost like it was just you and I raising kids. And so I just pray that they would get to find that same kind of joy and intimacy and growth with you during this season. And I pray that each one of these families gets to experience a long career in this job. It's hard. And so I pray that they get to experience it to the fullness and that they get to serve others through this and to bring you much glory. And we pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. And thank you to all the firemen and all those first responders, and their spouses and
Yeah.
families that are also sacrificing. So we appreciate and love all of you all. And until next time, we'll see you later.